It is a blessed Sunday evening, the last Sunday and the last day of the month of October 2021. It's an honor to welcome you to the program Bible Answer Man. Well, not too long ago, I guess somewhere on the 25th of October, a very important meeting was held between church leaders and the current IGP. A few things came up, and the discussions were quite very important in our time. They looked at Ghana as a secular state, did quite a few references to certain cases that has gone through the law system. Bonfa versus the Attorney General, Warren versus Okujeto. They also spent some time to bring to bear the Constitution as a secular one for our nation. And they also considered duties, clawbacks, and limits. I'm sure as we begin the conversation this evening on Bible Answer Man, critically looking at the subject, the church and religion, we'll be able to delve into the whole document and what it entails, how much a benefit it will be to the church and then our nation as well. This evening I'm excited because I have a very capable guest in the studio. I'm going to introduce them right away and then we will begin the conversation. We are looking at the church and religion. And just as you know, our program Bible Answer Man is very interactive. Once we begin, the WhatsApp line is open and we'll encourage you to bring your comments and questions and contributions. Reverend Dr. Emmanuel K. Ansa is not a stranger to the program, the convener of the executive director of Kingdom Equip Network. He's also married to a professor, Professor Evelyn Koko Ansa, and they are blessed with 3 children. He's been on this program for quite a couple of times. Reverend Dr. Ansa, good evening.
Good evening.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I hope your Sunday has been very fruitful and eventful.
Great. It's been a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you very much. We also have one who also doesn't need introduction. He is the senior partner of Benti Enchel Lecha and Ankoma is Andan Ankoma. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
What have you been up to within the last 2 days? Let me ask.
Well, I guess after the presentation, I got the opportunity to sort of make the presentation again yesterday. It appears to have triggered reactions, some positive, expected some negative, but I'm just there. I just did.
Well, let me ask.
I've said what
has to be said.
I understand the law to say. It's okay. It's open and okay to disagree with what I've said. You can also then take a look at the law and tell me that you disagree. That's the job we do. So I have said what I think the law says, and I'm done. After speaking here today, I'm done.
Are you sure?
I have nothing else to say.
Well, we can only feel important for giving us the opportunity. But Mr. Asankuma, what's the whole document about? The church and religion. What exactly is it about? The state.
What happened was that the current IGP gave me a call and said he has a meeting with church leaders. That he kind of knows that I've done a presentation on the church and the law before. So some of the stuff I'm saying is not new. I've done this presentation definitely to NAC. Yeah, I did this presentation. Kingdom Equip, NAC, and I've done it at CCC in Kumasi, Reverend Ansel Obin's church. So at least some pastors I've heard, and I've done it one-on-one to certain religious leaders in this country. So it's nothing new. I think what is new is the coverage of it this time around, and that more people are getting to know about what's been in our laws, some pre-colonial, some from 1960. And people are just hearing about it for the first time and they're surprised. You know, so I guess that's where the whole thing comes from. But I'm just saying what I read in the law. I've just put it together in a way that I can present it. So.
I guess it's been quite simplified, because when my producer forwarded to me and I went through it, even from my layman point of view, I could understand a few things. But I'm sure this evening you could walk us through
I'll
it.
try. I'll go when you're tired. Stop me. You know, I talk for a living. So if you allow me, I'll talk for 3 hours.
You're a lawyer.
So if I don't talk, my children will eat. Okay, so but I start with a statement that I think some people are finding very difficult to accept. When I say Ghana is a secular state, the constitution is a secular constitution. The institutions of state are secular. Let me do a correction. This is not secular as in circle. This is secular as in SECULAR. Okay,
What's the difference, please?
But if a thing is going around, it always goes around. It's called
as
secular.
in
Secular.
CIR.
CIR. That's it's of the nature of a circle.
Yeah, but this is SECU.
As distinguished from religious. But
Yeah.
but I'll explain it in the context of the law, because I think that some people have deliberately refused to understand that what this is. This is, if you say a state is secular, you look at 4 things to see if those 4 things are in the state. Then it is secular. 1, does the state guarantee individual and corporate freedom of religion? Is there a guarantee of individual or corporate freedom of religion? If there is, the state is secular. Because if the state was not secular, it would impose a religion on everybody. But because the state is secular, in a sense, religion neutral. Remember, it's the state we are talking about. We are not talking about the citizens. So actually, the religion of the citizens doesn't have an effect on the state being secular or religious, unless the state says that we only guarantee a certain religion being here. But as long as it guarantees individual and corporate freedom of worship, that's the first indicator. Second, does it deal with the individual as a citizen, irrespective of religion? That if a person is caught breaking traffic laws, he cannot say, I was attending a prayer meeting and so will be allowed to go. And the other one who says, I was going to a disco, will be arrested. So does the state deal with the individual as a citizen, irrespective of religion? That's the second question. If it's yes, then that state is secular and not religious. 3, is the state constitutionally connected to a particular religion? Our constitution says no, and we will see the provisions. 4, does the state seek to either promote or interfere with religion? Our constitution says the state should back out of religion, unless there's and I'll show you the exceptions that have come in. So if these 4 exist, then the state is a secular state. And I will show you that if you go through our constitution, all of these 4 exist. So on the basis of this test and the reality in our constitution, Ghana is a secular state. We do not have a state religion. Announcement: Ghana is not a Christian state. We might have close to 72% people professing Christianity. That is your personal religion. We do not impose our personal religion on the state of Ghana unless we put in the constitution that Ghana is a Christian country. You cannot say Ghana is a Christian country. We may have the majority Christian population. That does not make the state of Ghana a Christian country. Remember, the state is an entity on its own. It is separate and distinct from all of us who are members of the state. We are inhabitants of the state. We are citizens. But the state is not us. Right? The last king to say the state is me lost his head. Louis XIV. The state is not us. The state is separate from us. So, and this is best illustrated in a case that went to the Supreme Court a year or 2 ago, Bonfer versus Attorney General. Why the plaintiff said the government's plan to build a national cathedral and establish a Hajj board breach the constitution because the state is secular. The Supreme Court used the opportunity to define what we mean by the secular state. It says that if you combine the letter and spirit of the Constitution, our Constitution guarantees fundamental freedoms, including the right to practice any religion and manifest the practice. Practice any religion and manifest it. By these provisions, religious pluralism and diversity, which are features of the secular state, are recognized in Ghana. And so I have news for all of you. Secular state, he may be allowed. I'll show you that all these rights also come with limitations. So there could be limitations.
Okay.
There could be limitations on the exercise of your freedom, because the religion does not then mean that, as you see, you can do everything that you like. But the basic principle is that you can have the religion and manifest it. Because if we allow you a freedom and you can't manifest it, it is no freedom. Right? And if you read the Bible, it says that they were told not to pray. And so, but Daniel went and opened his window and manifested his religion. So you are allowed to manifest your religion. But you will see that it is not an absolute right. But let's understand that the right to manifest any religion of your choice is a feature of the secular state, because the state is religion neutral. Let's understand that. It is not meant to deprecate any religion, or to say that the religion is irrelevant, or that the religion doesn't have the overwhelming majority of citizens following it. All it means is that the state is religion neutral. The court went on that, but it said that, but even secularism in the Ghanaian context must be allowed to understood to allow, or even encourage the state to recognize and accommodate religion and religious identity. Okay. And for me, this is the focus of this decision. But that's not all. That's the second Supreme Court decision, Warren and Okujeto, which says that our courts are not ecclesiastical courts. Let me explain this. A lot of the law might have been rooted in, for example, the Torah. But if you look at the 10 Commandments, only 2.5 are still law right now. Thou shalt not kill. But even that, it is now called murder. And murder is not just killing. It is intentionally killing a person by unlawful harm. So it might not be exactly what was in the 10 Commandments, because now law has added things to it. There must have been the intention to kill. Of course, there must have been a death. And it must have been through unlawful harm. Thou shalt not steal still remains. But stealing is defined as the dishonest appropriation of a thing that does not belong to you. So if you see what I'm saying? So it must have had its rule in the moral code, but it has taken a life of its own. I think the other one, the only one that now that is left is the other one that is left is thou shalt not bear false witness.
You mean the half?
The half. But thou shalt not bear false witness. It doesn't matter if I lie to you in social life, but you cannot bear false witness in court or to a public officer. So if you bear false witness in court, it's called perjury. If you bear false witness to a public officer, it is called deceit of public officer. So that's the half. Because so it is not all lies that are a crime. Yeah. It is if it's either told to a court under oath or subject to affirmation or to a public officer. Yeah. And so we must recognize that yes, a lot of the law might have been based on the moral code and maybe biblical principles. But as time has gone, honor your mother and father, and not honor your mother and father. It's not a criminal offense. It is wrong. It's not a criminal offense. Thou shalt the one about God.
Serve no other gods.
Serve no other gods. It is a religious problem.
Thou shalt not swear.
Okay, we swear in court, but that's different. So because even the swearing in court, you have the option not to swear. You can simply affirm. So I remember that I was being sworn into notary public, and I swore the oath. And when I was going, one of the people, they said, "Why did you swear? Your Bible says you shouldn't swear. Why didn't you just affirm?" So the next time I was in court, I just affirmed. So it says that these are not ecclesiastical courts rendering divine justice, but ordinary secular courts delivering justice according to mortal laws. Plead your cause in accordance with laid down man-made rules. This is Ghana's Supreme Court speaking. That these are not ecclesiastical courts. Then there's another one which says, Osam Pinanko and Lati says, there is no established religion in Ghana recognized as the religion of the state. So those who are having a quarrel because I said the state is secular, listen to the court. There is no established religion in Ghana recognized as a religion of the state. If there was, there would have been law. The constitution says we can't. It says that the courts apply the laws of the country and not what the Christian Bible teaches. The Christian Bible is a moral code. Legal issues are different. They may coincide. If they do, fine. But they're different. And this is the court in Ghana speaking. And there's another one where so I've talked about Christians, so Christians might say I'm picking on them. Let's look at the fetish and then traditional religion. It says that in Obeying versus Jabba, 1976, under Jay's decision, it says in a court of law, it is difficult, if not impossible, to adduce legally acceptable evidence that establishes the efficacy of the fetish. It says the method by which the fetish works cannot be comprehended. It is shrouded in mystery, secrecy, and darkness. The court cannot stop people from resorting to fetish to settle their differences. They says perhaps their brand of proceedings is quicker than the law court. It is doubtful whether their findings can found a course of action in the law court. So the law court will not recognize a claim based on fetish. In fact, if they steal your fetish, if somebody comes and takes your fetish gods, it's just stealing. It is no spiritual, there's no spiritual crime, it's stealing. And we have cases where people have been charged with stealing fetish items. Yeah. The spiritual thing behind it, the court doesn't care. It's just that you have dishonestly appropriated a thing that you are not the owner of. Stealing. Okay. So that is the reality of it.
Yeah. in fact, dear listener, your dial is still on 97.3 City FM. The program is Bible Answer Man. Dr. Kobinansa, Ace has opened up the big guns and started shooting already. But in the four things he spoke about that makes Ghana a secular state, the second one actually gets to me, where the Constitution treats every citizen to have the rights of citizenship irrespective of the religion they resort to. All this while, a great number of our Christians, I'm not sure, have known this.
Yes, I think, let me also add something to what he said. I don't hear him to be saying that our faith should not be manifested in our state life. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying that in the face of the law, that preeminence that people unfortunately have in their minds, that's not the case. So that must be very clear. So in fact, in the ruling, for example, the Bonfair thing he read, the final ruling was the aim of the person who went to court, the plaintiff, was to stop the state from supporting a Christian or the theater, the cathedral, sorry.
And then the Hajj.
The Hajj as well, that's right. So it was trying to stop a spiritual activity which the state was supporting. And the ruling was that no, even though we are a secular state, the state he didn't go further to talk about the circumstances in which the state could support. So that provision is not to mean that the state cannot and should not be involved. Otherwise, even as in the same constitution he read, the beginning says, "We, the people of Ghana, in the name of God, Almighty God." So there's no recognition. The only difference is that we are not emphatic. We're not selective in the way it ought to be managed.
Absolutely.
And I think that is very, very, very important for people to understand. Yes. And I think that yes, we've reached a point where these clarifications have become necessary because there are a few misconceptions in the way we go about our public debate whenever it comes to church and state relationship. And so for me, I think maybe as this discussion goes on, the clarifications will come better. And let's also look at the context within which this particular debate, this particular discussion is going on, which is the discussion with the police and the law enforcement. We should not lose sight of it, that this is happening because there are activities going on in religious circles, Christian, Muslim, and other religious circles, which the police perhaps believe could contravene the laws of the land. And because we are generally very religious as a nation, we are about 90% religious people, or non-Muslim Christian combination, about 90%. And there are other religions, of course, but the real bulk is the 90% of the Christian Muslim population. And there's a danger that when they try to activate the laws, people out of ignorance may overreact. And that's why I think this whole discussion is going on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was going to add that Sophie is right. I mean, I was moving quickly along because we don't have too much time. But yes, in Bonfair and in Attorney General, I said that because we are a secular state, the country will not discriminate against you on the basis of your religion.
Yeah.
But that does not stop the state looking at the character of its people to decide to support them in a religious venture, because the state is secular. If the state was not secular, the state will just choose one religion and all the others will be discriminated against. But here we have a state that is supporting all of them. Allow the state to do that what it wants to do.
If the state chooses just one religion, does it make us a religious state?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because that becomes a state religion. And in countries with a state religion, you'd find out that the other religions are given very little room to operate, or zero room to operate at all. The state can declare itself an atheist state where no religion is allowed. But please, secular is not synonymous with atheist or agnostic. No. All it means is that the state is religion neutral. And it fits these four elements that I enumerated. So let's not get the confusion that somebody is going to turn Ghana into a state that doesn't recognize religion.
And I think there's also another thing, which has to do with the states that have non-conversion laws, where you can't speak to somebody to join your religion. Once you're born into this particular religion, you cannot go to other person who is practicing another religion for them to join your group, and it's seen as a breach of the law. And in fact, in many countries, especially the Middle East and Asia and others, it's a very serious offense. It could even lead to death. They call it proselyting, trying to convert people to come into your religious fold. But here, that is not an issue.
That is not an issue.
Christians can get across to Muslims, Muslims can get across Christians, and all the other places.
So the secular state guarantees you way more freedom than the religious state.
In fact, just as I said from the beginning, we are all being schooled today. But Mr. Esankuma, from what you have said, it appears as if there has been quite a certain amount of criminal offenses.
Oh
yes, we have, and because of the time we have on our hand, I'd like us to, because there were other things we could have looked at,
about the
trust guarantee.
Yes, we can skip all of that.
Yes, and then let's. So, what are some of the offenses, criminal? You know,
okay. Okay, but understand this. So, although the Constitution says every person, whatever his religion, is entitled to fundamental human rights, it says that it is subject to respect for the rights and freedoms of others and for the public interest. Now that is where the issue about certain things that we do might sound in criminal law. You have the right to do it, but it is subject to the rights and freedom, respecting the rights and freedoms of others. So you have the right to manifest your religion in prayer. But that right to manifest your religion in prayer must respect the right of your neighbor who wants to sleep at night.
Okay.
So you may pray, but you cannot keep him up at night because you are praying. You may go to church and have your service, but you cannot drive a person out of his room with your loud music. So there's a balance. And that is where the issue about crimes come into play. Now, it is not as if any law says a Christian cannot do this. It doesn't say that. The law, because we are a secular state, is neutral. And so you may do something that will be an infraction of the law. Now, when you do that, the law will not say you get away with it because you're a Christian. It says the law does not care your religion.
Or
You can't do
religious
this.
person. Maybe
Or
because
you're Muslim.
Yes, that's right.
That you're a religious
Just
person. The law will not say because you're a religious person you can do it. When the law says don't do it, that immediately takes the state out of the secular state. But because the state is secular, it recognizes your right. And if you do the thing, then you cannot say that because it was a manifestation of my religion, I could do it. And so it cuts across all the religions. And so we can start with, and I like to start with Reverend Answer's calling. Now, ordinarily, they are not public officers, but they could be.
Okay.
As Reverend Answer is sitting here, he's not a public officer. He's a private person. When he gets involved in a marriage ceremony, like publication of the banns of marriage,
Yeah.
solemnization of the marriage, or keeping a register or certificate of marriage, birth, baptism, death, or burial, he becomes a public officer. He then is as much a public officer as IGP Dampare.
So that means almost all our pastors, our apostles, our prophets,
When they-
immediately we assume that
This
function.
marriage officer role, where you are publishing banns of marriage, you are conducting the wedding, or you are making or keeping birth certificate, burial certificate, baptism certificate, burial certificate, marriage certificate, you are a public officer. Just for that purpose.
Maybe for clarification,
Yes,
if
sir.
I may interject. Sorry for that.
Oh, no, sorry.
But, what about, I have attended in the past, many years ago, wedding ceremonies in classroom, Kanesh First Light.
Yeah.
There was a wedding there and at Mataiko at the top there. And a pastor officiated. Would you say he had committed an offense?
No, I haven't said that.
No, I'm just because you see, is he purporting to be a public officer?
No, he's not. Actually,
Those churches that are issuing certificates, is it illegal or what?
Okay, let me explain that. Now, once you are operating, you are a public officer. It's not a crime to be a public officer. The law says you are a public officer. Once you are involved with the notification of an intended marriage, or solemnization of marriage, or the making or keeping of a register or certificate of marriage, birth, baptism, death, or burial, for that purpose alone, you are a public officer. It's not saying an offense.
Yeah, but
the law has made you a
Yes,
public
let me
officer.
clarify it.
I wanted-
If you are doing it within the context of the law, you see, because there are people who are doing it out of the context of the law.
Yeah.
Those are the people I'm referring to.
Now, let me explain that. This is actually in our Criminal Offences Act. And it doesn't appear to me to be distinguishing between them. However, a marriage is not a marriage unless it is conducted by a marriage officer. And
Okay,
so if you are simply blessing a marriage, it is not what this is talking about.
Okay,
I think
so you're presenting this particular point on the note that whoever the pastor, the apostle, or who is supposed to should have been ordained, they should have
No,
some.
I haven't said all of that.
Not at all.
Not at all. Is the person a minister of religion or an ecclesiastical officer
Okay.
of a denomination? Is that person performing a function in respect of notification of intended marriage, solemnization of marriage, or making or keeping a register or certificate of marriage, certificate of birth, baptism, death, or burial? For that limited purpose, that minister of religion or ecclesiastical officer
Is a public
is
officer.
a public officer. You see, because these are functions that are ordinarily reserved for public officers. Remember that a pastor cannot, and Reverend Science, right? A pastor cannot just get up and say, I'm blessing, I'm conducting a marriage in my church. For the pastors, you must be appointed a marriage officer,
Okay.
and then the building must also be licensed. So there are two licenses involved: the building and the individual. Then you are constituted. So within the strict limits of this, you become a public officer. Now, I'm not saying you're a public officer because then you are committing a crime. No, because you're a public officer, there are certain protections the law gives to you.
Okay, so there are some benefits as well.
For example, so if Reverend Ansah is officiating a wedding, and I get in there and I start obstructing what he's doing, molesting him, resisting him, using threatening or abusive language against him, I commit a crime.
Okay.
A special crime called assault of public officer. Now this applies to public officers. So if I do that to Reverend Ansah, it's as if I'm doing it to IGP. Dampare.
Okay.
It's not just a normal assault. It doesn't even just insults, obstruction, molesting. If Reverend Ansah is conducting a funeral service, and I get in there and carry the coffin away, assault of public officer, because I have obstructed his work. Because for the purposes of the death service, he's a public officer. So you see how the Lord then protects the work that they do. If I go to see Reverend Ansah, I want to get married, and he says, yeah, I hear you're divorced. I say, yes, this is the divorce certificate. And it is evidence that I've fabricated. I've committed an offense. Because he's a public officer.
You can't lie to a public
No. In fact, deceit of public officer is a crime. And I give this example. The lady who was sentenced, she was sentenced to 2 years for...
In Takrady.
Yeah, in Takrady. She was sentenced for 2 years for false information. But she was sentenced to 6 years for deceiving a public officer. Because you can say you've been kidnapped. But if you say to a policeman and it's not true, it's a very high offense. And so if you're appearing before a pastor for the purposes of marriage, birth, death, etc., you can't go to them with falsified papers. That is deceit of public officer, and you could go to jail for a minimum of 6 years. Yes. Simply because at that point the law has elevated him into the status of a public officer. Once he finishes doing that, he's back to private person. But having said that, then if the person who is now deemed to be a public officer, or if a person falsely pretends to be a public officer, that's the crime. If the public officer falsifies any books, so if the pastor and the guy who wants to get married are involved in falsifying the record, the pastor has committed an offense which can only be committed by public officers, because the pastor is a public officer. Issuing false certificates, destruction of official documents. If a pastor as a public officer, not just in his private capacity, that is different. So you see that the pastor wears two hats. In the same service, he could be a private person, become a public officer, and then become a private person.
At the same time.
Because he's wearing two hats. So a normal service is started. In the middle of it, he decides to have a burial service. He becomes a public officer for that purpose. After he's done and everybody's gone home, he's no longer, he becomes a private person. And it's not really that cut and dried. So we must be careful about some of these things. And guess what? This is neutral. It says every minister of religion who does that is a public officer, and we don't care which religion it is. It says any denomination. So what will apply to Reverend Ansah as a Christian or so forth will apply to the
Muslim clergy.
Imam.
Yeah.
Might even apply to the fetish priest, to the extent that the fetish priest is involved in a marriage. I don't know if they do that. But having said that, we must move. Then there's another thing that people the main thing, that one of the main things, noise crimes. Noise crimes. The law doesn't say churches should not make noise. The law doesn't say discos should not make noise. The law doesn't say beer bars should not make noise. The law doesn't say private individuals who are having parties in their houses should not make noise.
Funerals,
it simply
displays.
It simply says, for first one, you cannot play any instrument or make a loud noise within 300 yards of a place where a court is sitting. Period. Secular state. That's all it has said. Playing an instrument or making loud noise within 300 yards of a place where a court is sitting. So if you decide to have a party 250 yards from a court and you play loud music, you have committed an offense. If whilst having the party you change it, but if instead of having a party you had a church service when a court is sitting 250 yards, it's the same offense, because the state is secular. It is religious neutral. It has passed the law. Anybody who flouts the law has flouted the law. Religion is not a defense. And in fact, religion also won't make your offense worse. It is simply an offense. But this is the one that catches all of us. Making loud or unseemly noise that disturbs the peace or annoys or disturbs another person. So I'm sleeping in my house.
Yeah.
and it's 4 a.m. and there's a call to prayer. Is it loud or unseemly noise that is disturbing the peace or annoying or disturbing me? That's an offense to whoever is making the noise. Or I'm lying in my bed at 5:30 a.m. and somebody comes around my house holding a megaphone doing a dawn broadcast. Is a person making loud, unseemly noise? Is it disturbing the peace or annoying or disturbing me? It is a crime. It is just like my next door neighbor having a party for 3 days non-stop with loud music. Is my next door neighbor annoying or disturbing me? If the answer is yes, it's a crime. The state is secular. It is religious neutral. So the noise being religious in nature doesn't make it any more a crime or less a crime than what it is. It is the noise that is the crime. And not
whether it is noise from a party, noise from a
church
cultural display,
the cultural display, the noise.
It's
to the extent that
noise.
it disturbs or annoys me, it's a crime. Now, even if I decide not to go to the police, there's something called nuisance. That is not criminal, it's a civil law. That if you use your land in a manner that wrongfully interferes with my enjoyment of my land. So we are next door neighbors. The same scenario. You have a party 1 week non-stop and I can't sleep. Means you are using your land in a way that interferes with my enjoyment of my land. So noise, vibrations, it could be smells, it could be fumes. That your next door neighbor decides to burn the rubbish in his house. And so every day there's smoke coming. If it's not smoke, it's house flies.
Well, let me come in here, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes listen to some of these. I think that's what's causing all the uproar and the fear. But I think the reality is that, as we rightly started at the beginning, 70%, 90% religious, and over the years, by and large, we have lived harmoniously in spite of all these laws. And we also the key thing is, how do you manage to coexist in a peaceful manner? Because really, by the strict sense, like he talked about the decibels and the stuff that comes from
the noise.
The noise. No, the government agencies. What do you call it?
EPA.
Environmental EPA. If you're going to get EPA to come and measure, nobody can step out.
All of us
Even private parties, nobody can have
even
a private
private
parties
parties,
or dinner.
absolutely.
So the way we do things. So that's why we need to learn to negotiate with each other.
Thank you very much. Because it will not be disturbing or annoying to me if my neighbor came and said, Chalija, I'll chime your party. I'll play some music. What's up? I'm like, go right ahead. I'm good. I'll even come for the party. That is no longer annoying or disturbing. I did a case where it was a generator or so. He had a generator, and it was so close to the other's wall that he put the generator away from his bedroom because of the noise and the smoke, and put it so close to the wall that it is under the bedroom of the neighbor.
Of the neighbor, yeah.
The court said, "Stop it. You can't do that."
Yeah, but
But on that, but if it's nuisance, the court might award damages against you for the disturbance of the past and give an injunction to stop you from future disturbance. And if you do that, then if you disobey the injunction, you could be cited for contempt and then could face jail time. And I'm saying this because I'm presenting the law.
Yeah.
I said that the days of ignorance are gone.
Ace, please, I'd like us to now look at the other bit of the criminal offenses where we pastors, prophets, evangelists, seem to say things that are either criminal or they are not. No, let's get that clarification.
We'll do that. Okay. I just wanted to pass one through that. It's also a crime to behave irreverently or indecently in a church or a chapel or mosque. So you can't go to Reverend Ansar's church and whilst they are doing something else, decide that you're going to play a drum.
How about if someone is having a wedding and another man or another woman feels that either the man
is it
also a crime?
Is it irreverent? Is it indecent? Does it molest the pastor? Yes, in fact, disturbing a minister of religion, even private capacity, while celebrating a religious rite in a public place is a crime.
I suppose maybe he's talking about a situation where you want to make protest about the situation.
Yeah.
There's a process.
That's a process.
Okay.
You can't just go and stand at the back of the altar or the chapel and scream, "Hey, this woman!"
People come with
Placards.
with placards and with palm oil.
It is an offense.
Yeah.
It's an offense. It is a crime. You could go to jail for it. That is why they will announce if anybody has just cause.
Yes,
So you
yes.
can raise your hand and decently make your point. But if you get in there with the profane songs and everything, that is a
an
crime.
offense.
You will go to jail. But people have been arrested and fined for doing that in this country. It's just that it's at the magistrate court, so it doesn't get reported in the law. But it does happen. But now let's get to the issue of the prophecies. Let me explain this. Anybody listening to me, the law does not say you cannot prophesy. The law does not even say that you can't have a prophecy of harm and danger. The issue is the communication. What the law says that if you publish, now publish is disclosing anything publicly, communicating anything publicly. So if you receive it and it's not a public disclosure, you haven't committed a crime. So if you publish a statement which is likely to cause fear and alarm to the public or disturb the public peace, knowing or having reason to believe that the statement is false, you've committed a crime. So one, you must have published a statement. It must have the likelihood to cause fear, likelihood, which means that it doesn't have to. But is it likely to cause fear and alarm or disturb the public? Knowing that it is false.
No, so when you say is it likely? It might not have caused it, but it is likely to have. So
If it has
given
the
it all
potential.
the circumstances, okay.
If it has the potential, you've committed a crime.
Sorry, oftentimes people who are into false or alarming prophecies, statements, believe strongly that they are actually under the inspiration of God to say what is right.
I'll explain that. I'll explain that. But let me give you a little big background to this thing. As we are sitting here, three of us, then I shout, "Snake!" Then we all run out. Nobody might have been injured. But was it likely to cause fear and panic to the public?
But
Assuming the public was there.
was there a snake?
Good. Now this is what the law will say. Was there a snake? It says it must be false. Now, false here doesn't mean that there was or there wasn't. False means that before you publish the information, you took reasonable measures to verify its accuracy. So that you actually looked and saw something that looked like a snake. Reasonable measures to verify accuracy. And so if you now the reasonable measures to verify accuracy must be proved in court. The word the law uses is proved. Proof in court is evidence that can be seen, smelled, tasted, heard, or touched. The law says that evidence is defined as testimony, writings, material objects, and other things presented to the senses. Please, how are you going to prove spiritual inspiration?
That's the
As proof.
question I wanted to ask.
You can't. And that is why I made the statement. Mesrodaye minya kwanche is not evidence in court. It's not proof. As for court, can we see it? Can we touch it? Unless it's opinion evidence. Can we see it? Can we touch it? Can we smell it? Can we taste it? And so that is where the problem will be. The law is not saying don't speak it. It says be careful how you communicate it. And so if I have a prophecy that something evil is going to happen and I go to the authorities and say, look, I think this is what is going to happen, and I communicate with them, I haven't broken the law. But if I take the microphone in my church and publish it, you've broken the law.
How about
Or you could have broken the law, yes.
How about when they speak it on radio, they are on social media?
It gets worse if you get onto the internet. Because the Electronic Communications Act says that if you knowingly send a communication which is false or misleading, or likely to prejudice, endanger the safety of any person, electronically, it's a further offense.
Whoa. Dear listener, your dial is still on 97.3 City FM. This evening we are having a conversation on the church and the law. The church and the law. Now, we have a great number of our listeners coming through. There are quite a few comments. But before we look at the comment, Mr. Ace Ankoma, what is the period of offense for people who publish statements that are false?
It's a misdemeanor, so it's anything from a caution, a fine, to up to 3 years in jail. If it goes electronically, that could be up to 5 years in jail. Up to 5 years in jail. I'll add another thing: prayer camps and exorcism, when they chain people that they are casting out demons. That's second-degree felony. You could go to jail for up to 10 years. So be careful about the things you do in your church. That this woman, especially, it's almost women who are chained, that they are witches until the witchcraft spirit has left. The person will not be chained, or they actually even bring the person that the person is unwell, has a mental condition, and then the person is chained or physically restrained. Please be careful when you want to lay hands. Then the Bible itself says that a person. Say a person, you be careful, you don't lay hands. Yeah. Well, guess what? You could go to jail for touching a person without consent. And even if the person consents, but the law says that you were in a certain fiduciary position, spiritual position is recognized as that, where the consent was induced, the law will void the consent. So you say that he agreed, so he lay down and I sat on his head, as you've seen some prophets do. You could go to jail. Sitting, punching a woman in the belly, you could go to jail. But massaging a woman's belly that the woman is getting pregnant, you could go to jail. It doesn't matter that the woman said you could do it. But if it is shown that the consent is voided because you were in a certain position where you could exercise undue influence on her, the undue influence will vitiate the consent, and you could still go to jail. I'm just presenting the law.
Yeah, but
let us be very
educative, very, very educative.
Trial by ordeal, where they said that where you subject the person to bodily injury to get them to confess something or the other, it is a crime.
All of which attract certain periods of sentences.
It's a second-degree felony. In Ghana, crimes are arranged. If it's a misdemeanor, tops 3 years. Second-degree felony. 10. I think that's 10, and then you can go to first degree felony, which is.
So how about this prophecies that somebody was going to die, and because we all want to live.
Well, the question is, is it a publication? Yes, it is, because it's been said in the church room, which is a public place. That's the other thing. Every place used for religious service is a public place. So it might be your bedroom. You sleep there, it's a private place. The minute you start having religious services in your bedroom, it becomes a public place. So if you utter it in a public place, you have published it. There's a third parties who have heard it, who are not supposed to hear it. Does it have the likelihood of causing fear and panic? Of course, death is likely to make, Jimmy Behu, and the family and the public are people, look at all these important people, they're supposed to die. And often they don't die. Yeah. Then you have a problem.
Dr. Ansah.
Well, as I've said earlier, sometimes when you listen to just the law, you might think that we're actually in a police state. And it's like we're under siege. And that's what's causing the reaction. But I think that the key things that have come out of what Ace is saying today, and he's been saying, is that it's not the fact that you prophesy which is under attack. It's how you manage the communication. So the question that the church, we need to all look at is, number one, I look at it even before the communication, is training, knowledge. You see, there are a lot of people who are parading as ministers who first and foremost don't have the requisite training. And it doesn't have to be very formal training, but if you are even self-educated, because there are many successful ministers who haven't had formal, maybe doctor of theology, master of theology, and all of that. It's good, you need it. But that's the first thing, the training, either by mentorship or whatever, that has to come in. Then also the awareness, after the formal training, you see that some of these things, even though they are real, they are not really. You won't go to most Bible schools, even the topmost like Trinity and others. You may not even. You may come out licensed as a minister without this legal education. So it cuts across denominations. It can happen to the independent church as much as the bigger traditional churches. So the other thing is, how do we even license ministers to do, especially he talks about public ministers as public officials. But the process, is virtually almost automatic, because you go to the registrar, the part that deals with registrar general license, and is about if the church has a facility, the district assembly, the regional administration publishes your facility. They don't check these things. Registrar general is the one who gives the permission for people to marriage officers. They assign that role to ministers. Yeah. There is no formal education, so to speak. They come and do about a few hours of training, and nobody is tested, and people are not tested from time to time to know how well they know and practice these things that he's talking about. So at the end of the day, I think that there is an obligation on the denominations, the communicable bodies. There's also a big obligation on the state. If the state is putting people in such key positions, positions of responsibility, where we're talking about people being public officials, and the people you are putting there, you haven't prepared them, then you are really creating a landmine. Because I'm a marriage officer, I'm not aware of...
We've sat on this landmine for quite a long time, haven't
exactly. we? So why do you license me when I'm not aware of all the implications? And I go in there and I think I'm just doing I say things I'm not supposed to say.
I'm doing a very noble work.
And I think I have a right to say and do. The prophecy bit of it, that one I also understand. Then again, that also comes to even those of you in the communication sector. Because what's the rule? When somebody's come to your station, what are the guidelines? Once I can pay, I come to city, I start talking. Nobody gives us any guidelines. Nobody says, Pastor,
here in city you can't come.
And you know what is worse? That section 208 is not only about the publishing, it's reproducing. So if the man says it's in his church and you go and cover it and publish it, you too, you have committed the same offense.
Whoa.
Now, I've tried to prevent this as raw as possible.
Yeah.
Just so I think the shock element is important. This exists. Whoa. Now let's sit down and begin to think.
In fact, that's what I was going to ask. And Reverend Dr. Ansah has even said something already. But is there anything you would like to say, Mr. Isankuma, as measures we can begin putting in place to salvage this situation on our hands?
Well, we ought not to perish through lack of knowledge. Knowledge is something that exists. One thing I did after the presentation was to say that I'll give a copy to anybody who asks for it. And I'm not saying agree with me. Call your church lawyer and sit down with your church lawyer, him or her, and ask, is this true? Is this true? Verify for yourself, right? And then advise yourself on what to go. I'm not saying this is the master plan, this is the blueprint. It's a compilation of various laws. Here, have it for free. I'm not charging anybody for this. Look at it, call your church lawyer. Now, if I say call your church lawyer and your church doesn't have a lawyer,
that should tell you
that should tell you that you are in the minefield that the Reverend Ansah is talking about.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Ace Annan Ankuma. Reverend Dr. Ansah, any last words?
Well, I think that, like he just hit it, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And we are in an era, generation where knowledge is very critical for the church to survive. And the relationship between the church and state, especially where the law is concerned, can easily be harmonized a little bit more knowledge, especially among the clergy. We need to look at ourselves. As I've mentioned, the individual churches have to look at themselves. The communicable bodies ought to be up, and doing on the job, because there's so much people expect of the communicable bodies, and in reality, they seem helpless. So these engagements are going to wake up the communicable bodies. When I say communicable bodies, the Christian Council, the National Association of Charismatic Churches, and Pentecostal Council, and all of these bodies, there's a lot that is on their neck. And
Reverend Dr. Ansah, myself and you have been on this program where some of these issues have come up, and we bemoaned the Christian Council, the Charismatic, Apostolic, and Pentecostal Council. They couldn't do anything about it because, from what Mr. Anan Ankuma has said, the nation is a secular nation and it actually seeks to be neutral. Our time is gone. Thank you very much.
Well, there's a lot more we're going to but this is a start. But you have a copy of it, so anybody who wants can ask you for it. Give it to them. Let every church look at this and advise itself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anan Ansah, the senior partner of Benchi Enchel Lecture and Ankuma, and then also Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Kobina Ansah. Let's see, and enough of you. I am Reverend Fred McDavis. As we leave here, the Writers Project are coming up. I can see Dr. Martin Egbla-Wogbe ready to treat us to some literary work, after which Jojo Bediako will be coming your way, Beauty for Ashes. Later on,